I recently found out that my wife, who is 41 years old, was contacted by her ex-boyfriend, a 36-year-old co-writer of hers. As a 44-year-old male, I must admit that this situation has made me a bit nervous. I want to provide some context about our relationship dynamics before delving into my concerns. My wife and I have always been very open about our pasts, including previous partners and experiences. We may even be considered overly open by some standards. It's worth mentioning that she is my second wife, as I went through a divorce with my first wife due to her infidelity. Interestingly, the ex-boyfriend my wife recently heard from happens to be the father of my son. In addition to our son, my wife also has a daughter from her previous marriage. We've been happily married for 5 years, and our blended family has been a source of joy and harmony for all of us. As I mentioned before, we have a tendency to be very open about our past relationships, sometimes to an excessive extent. It's worth noting that my wife's first husband had a history of infidelity. Being a musician, he was often surrounded by women during his gigs, and unfortunately, he succumbed to the temptations and cheated on my wife multiple times. One day, my wife stumbled upon a shocking discovery while going through her ex-husband's emails. She found out that he had been involved with not just one, but 5 other women. To make matters worse, one of these women was pregnant with his child. Faced with this devastating revelation, my wife was determined to salvage their relationship, as she didn't want their unborn child to grow up in a broken home. In her search for guidance and support, she reached out to a longtime internet friend named Chris. Although they had been friends for 7 years, they had never had the opportunity to meet in person. Interestingly, my wife and Chris were not just friends, but also writing partners. Prior to losing contact, they had been collaborating on a novel together. When she reached out to him for support during this challenging time, Chris proved to be incredibly understanding and compassionate. He not only offered guidance on overcoming infidelity, but also provided valuable advice on legal matters and speaking with an attorney, displaying his qualities as a true friend. During their conversations, the idea to revisit their joint writing project resurfaced. Inspired by their renewed connection and shared passion for storytelling, they decided to dive back into writing their book once again. According to my wife, she and Chris began engaging in casual flirting. However, since they lived far apart, they were unable to act on their feelings. It seems that my wife reached a point where she felt her marriage had reached an impasse, and she stopped making efforts to mend things. It was as if she emotionally withdrew or checked out of the relationship. Meanwhile, the attraction between my wife and Chris continued to grow, and by the end of the year, he made the decision to fly out and meet her in person. Following the affair becoming physical, my wife made the difficult decision to file for divorce. Not long after that, Chris made the choice to relocate later that year to be with her. To summarize the subsequent events, my wife's daughter, who was just 5 years old at the time, struggled to accept Chris. It's important to note that Chris didn't do anything wrong. It was simply a challenging adjustment for her daughter after the divorce, and she wasn't comfortable with someone new stepping into the role of her father. My wife expressed the need for a break due to a combination of factors, including his occasional crass behavior. Initially, she intended it to be a brief pause in their relationship. However, it deeply hurt him, and he decided to end things completely, even going as far as to move away. After several months passed, they re-established contact with the goal of completing their book. Eventually, they resumed their intimate relationship. During that period, their connection became primarily physical rather than emotional. They made significant progress toward completing the book, but then she began dating me, which led to them discontinuing their intimate involvement. As she entered a committed relationship, she started feeling uncomfortable with her ex's continued presence. Consequently, she admitted to reducing the frequency of her responses to his book-related emails and decreased her own contribution to the project. This change in dynamic frustrated him after a few months, leading him to block her on all communication platforms. Finally, after a period of 4 or 5 years with no communication, he unexpectedly reached out to her a month ago. It turns out he had contracted COVID-19 and nearly lost his life. In the time they had been apart, Chris took it upon himself to rewrite the book, excluding her contributions. Surprisingly, he managed to get the revised version published, wrote and published a sequel, and even released his work to the public. The book came perilously close to remaining unfinished if he had succumbed to the illness. He expressed his desire for her to take ownership of the rights to their collaborative project in the events something unfortunate happened to him, acknowledging her knowledge of the intended conclusion and her role in shaping the story. This gesture was genuinely thoughtful. However, as they continued their conversation, it came to light that he was currently working on a comic adaptation of their work and extended an invitation for her to join the project. He had made significant progress on the artwork for the comic adaptation, which got her quite excited. She eagerly showed me the illustrations and passionately explained the identities and backgrounds of each character, pointing out any design aspects she felt he had gotten wrong. Moreover, she had thoroughly read the first book and enthusiastically discussed the alterations he had made to names, character descriptions, and even plot elements in their comic version. It was evident that she was thoroughly enjoying the experience and having a lot of fun with it. I was aware of their collaboration in the past, as she had mentioned it before, but I was completely unaware of the vast universe they had created together. It became evident that this shared creation held great significance to her. I sensed that she might seriously consider his offer, and this thought troubled me. Previous experiences of their joint work had always resulted in enjoyable moments, often accompanied by whimsical and lighthearted content in their writing. I'm not typically prone to jealousy, and I certainly don't want to interfere with a long-held dream she had tucked away. However, I am hesitant about reliving the past. I must confess, I made the decision to eavesdrop on their conversation, and while he appears to be genuinely focused on discussing the project, she seems insistent on prying into his personal life, seeking more information. I wouldn't describe her inquiry as flirtatious, but she did ask him whether he is currently dating anyone. His response was that he is too occupied with his commitments, suggesting that relationships tend to hinder his progress. She advised him to re-enter the dating scene, stating that celibacy doesn't present a favorable image for him. We have always been open about our previous experiences, including moments of lighthearted intimacy. I recall her mentioning, while under the influence of alcohol, that a great physical connection shouldn't be mistaken for a great romantic relationship. I find myself in a perplexing situation. I am aware of the emotional turmoil my wife endured due to her past marriage, which led to her infidelity, involving this very man. I have met him, and he appears to be a trustworthy individual, yet their shared history leaves me apprehensive about potential developments. I feel the need to address my concerns with my wife, but I am wary of coming across as overly controlling or overbearing in the process. I want her to have a creative outlet because she shines in a unique and remarkable way. Whenever she speaks about this book that I had little knowledge of before, it becomes evident that it holds a profound significance to her, something she tries to downplay. I desire to see her embrace that passion and importance, without allowing their interactions to spiral into a romantic entanglement, as it has happened on multiple occasions already. Update. Recently, my wife's ex-boyfriend resurfaced, proposing to collaborate on a writing project they had both abandoned years ago. It turns out that he has achieved significant financial success with it. This revelation has left me questioning the true nature of the woman I thought I knew. The extent of her deception is so intricate and purposeful that it's difficult for me to grasp the reality that I have spent the last 6 years of my life with this individual. I made the decision to have a sincere conversation with her about my feelings regarding the situation. I expressed my happiness that she had rediscovered her passion for writing and acknowledged her talent in that area. I mentioned that it would be wonderful for her to explore it further, either as a hobby or even as a profession, considering her evident skill and enjoyment. During our discussion, she agreed with my perspective and expressed her concerns about Chris, her ex-boyfriend, re-entering her life. She shared her worries that he might be using the writing project as a pretext to reconnect with her. As she voiced these thoughts, I felt relieved and reassured. I thought to myself, okay, this is great. We share the same concerns, and she understands and respects my perspective. She's not dismissing my feelings or labeling me as controlling. It seemed like we were genuinely on the same page. However, little did I know that this conversation, which should have marked the resolution of the issue, would trigger an unexpected and unwarranted shift in my mindset. For some inexplicable reason, my mind began to doubt the smooth progress of the conversation, suspecting that things were going too well. Yesterday morning, while she was in the shower, I made the regrettable decision to breach her privacy and search through her phone. To my dismay, I discovered that her ex-boyfriend's number was still saved in her contacts, despite her previous assurances. What was even more concerning was the fact that their entire conversation had been intentionally deleted, which contradicted the recent 3-day time frame. Alarmed by this discovery, I decided to investigate further and checked her Facebook Messenger. There, I stumbled upon conversations where she discussed an upcoming work trip that would take her to Las Vegas. These findings only intensified the growing number of red flags and deepened my sense of unease. Well, apparently this 2-day-long thing has been canceled due to COVID, but she's been telling me she's going. They are discussing a hotel a town over and staying there, as well as sending each other people's vacation photos of Vegas so she'll have stuff to show if I ask. She is discussing potential restaurant options for their upcoming gathering, expressing enthusiasm about the idea of enjoying a beautiful full moon on the beach. However, she becomes aware that he isn't actually on the East Coast as he had previously claimed. Instead, he recently returned to town, which irks her since he evidently has enough financial means to reside there. He proudly shows her his current residence on Google Maps, and although she is consumed by anger, she must resist the temptation to drive her truck directly into his living room. 1 month ago, she had mentioned the need to pick up her brother from the airport, but now it becomes clear that it was actually him she was referring to. Although their message history doesn't extend much further back, there are references to discussions about various topics during the years they supposedly had no contact. My heart races with a mix of emotions as I read a particular line he wrote, which fills me with intense frustration and disbelief towards his actions. Despite claiming that we are just friends, the situation seems far more complex than that. After an 8-year absence, I arrive only 20 minutes after getting off the plane, eager to reconnect. We were best friends, or so I thought. However, it becomes apparent that she hasn't merely been avoiding him temporarily. She has been deliberately doing so for months. I recall her recent trip to her mother's place where she stayed overnight, and it dawns on me that she had likely used it as an opportunity to keep her distance. Although I haven't confronted her about it yet, her smile, once warm and comforting, now fills me with an overwhelming sense of resentment and animosity. I am determined to withhold my thoughts until after Christmas, not wanting to taint the holiday season for the children by making it a constant reminder of the situation. However, the truth is that my ability to bear this burden with a forced smile is becoming increasingly difficult. The mounting pressure inside me might lead me to confront her today or tomorrow, unable to contain my emotions any longer. Frankly, it feels like I am on the verge of losing my sanity, and it seems like a small miracle if I can manage to avoid succumbing to despair. I will be gathering information, including photographs and screenshots of her location. And tomorrow I am scheduled to meet with a lawyer to discuss the situation. Together with my brother's divorce attorney, we are formulating a plan. I am meticulously documenting all forms of communication, including text messages, as well as keeping track of her whereabouts and the places she claims to be going. My intention is to confront her about her actions the month after she stays at the hotel with him. I am ensuring that everything is well prepared and organized as I strive to avoid permanently disrupting Christmas for the children. I have overcome the wave of suicidal thoughts, and I want to express my gratitude to everyone who left kind messages for me. Your support helped me tremendously. Update. I want to extend my thanks to everyone who provided advice in response to my initial post yesterday. Your input has been invaluable. Engaging in activities helped me divert my thoughts from darker places and kept my hands occupied. I have been seeking support from my brother, and I have been consistently monitoring their communications. She has noticed a change in my behavior, and I explained to her that I have been feeling down due to the anniversary of my aunt's passing. This explanation was sufficient to prevent her from suspecting that I am aware of the extent of my knowledge. Today, I dedicated 3 hours of my time sitting in my car outside a McDonald's, utilizing their Wi-Fi to access her emails. I discovered that they have been using Yahoo Messenger to communicate, which is incredibly frustrating. She has shared numerous photos with him, including one where she is posing with the flowers I gifted her for her birthday. It's quite ironic and frustrating to see her engaging in such activities since they have apparently been enjoying these moments since March. I have diligently saved all the evidence, including the pictures, for future reference. Thank you for listening to the story to the end, and if you like it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to our channel. Write in the comments what you think about the story.